Welcome back to the Timeless Watch channel, guys. As always, before I get into anything, what am I wearing? I am wearing the Black Bay Blue, the Blue Bay as some people like to refer to it, and now almost infamous watch because it created quite a stir on the market there a couple of months ago, and it was announced. I'm going to do a review on it in the coming days, so watch out for that. If you're wondering why I'm talking about watches, because you clicked on this video because of the title itself, this is normally a watch channel. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't normally talk about this stuff. But I've been getting a lot of questions since the channel started, pretty much, about my story, about who I am and all of that stuff. So I figured I would start a little bit of story time episodes, just telling you guys some funny stuff that went on in my life. So here we are. Last week's one was Eddie Van Halen. He passed away. Rest in peace, Eddie. And I figured I'd kick it off with the stories of my little tour with his band. I figured I'd tell another story from around that time, from just the days leading up to that tour. There was some crazy goings on just getting to that gig. It was pretty wild, or that first gig in San Antonio. I had mentioned that when I did the gig, I had to go to the hospital afterwards there in San Antonio. So let me explain to you exactly why. For some reason, Florida really liked us. I don't know why, but we just really hit it off with Floridans. And so we wound up down there a lot. Gainesville, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, West Palm Beach, places like that. Never Miami, strangely. Miami it's like a different world. It's a separate entity down there. But we were down there. We did a couple of festivals in some towns down there in South Florida. And I met a girl at one of these. We were gigging with a band called Fuel. They were real, like, early 2000s, the noughties rock in America. They're a cool band, actually, really cool. We were gigging with these guys, and I guess we were backstage. It was an open air thing, big summer festival of some sort. And I met this girl who was a DJ for a local radio station down there. I won't mention the town because I know some of you guys will get freaky and start triangulating everything, and you'll find out who she is. But she was a DJ on the local radio station that was playing our song a lot. That was the first time I ever came out of an airport, got in a taxi, and my song came on the radio in the taxi. That was the first time that ever happened. One of the only times. We never really struck it huge, so it was a rare occurrence for that to happen. So I met this girl. She was backstage. We had done the interview. She was there. She was one of the interviewers, and she was cool, man. Very bubbly, very intelligent, very beautiful. She had a bottle of vodka, and she's like, "You don't have a drink? You want a drink?" I'm like, "Sure." We start hanging out together down there. I think the band went ahead, and I caught up with them later. I think she came to visit me a couple of times in New York after that, maybe once or twice. But it didn't really go anywhere from there. It kind of dried up, fizzled out, as it were, because I'm up in New York then after, So I hadn't talked to her in quite some time, and in those months the band started getting bigger and bigger shows. We're going out with huge acts, and I guess it must have been a year later or a little less, we got the call about Van Halen. We're going to go out with Van Halen for a few shows. I think it was 5 or 6 shows. We were very excited, obviously. I was like, wow, I'm going to go nuts. It's the perfect audience for us. We'll play all our hardest songs. I'll go hog wild on that stage, And but there was another show booked just before that was to start, and it was in that town down in lower Florida, South Florida, where that girl was. we decided to do the gig anyway. I didn't care either way, but we decided we should do that. We should honor that, you know, we've still got a fan base down there. We're not above doing that, you know, we still hadn't hit the big time, you know. Remember where you come from, guys, like who was seeing you before you were playing bigger stages. So just go down, do the show, and then go from there on to the Van Halen tour. So we decided to do that, and we were heading down to South Florida, and I got the text, you know, that inevitable text that I was just waiting for it to come through, and it did. Hey, I hear you're coming to town. I saw there was a notification at the concert. Am I going to see you while you're here? I'm like, sure, why not? So we got down there, and it's a bigger club than we had played before. You know, in the meantime, we had gotten a little bit more popular down there. People knew who we were. The gig is sold out or whatever. We go in and sound check. It's a big club. It's like a big nightclub or something. And she turns up at the sound check. I remember thinking, why the hell is she here? She's at the bar there while we're sound checking. I'm like, wow, chomping at the bit, girl. But fine. So I see her, and we head off for drinks, and we get some dinner together and stuff. And then we come back to the club for showtime, which is what, 10 p.m. or something. Place is rammed, packed full. Crazy atmosphere. Everybody a little wild, you know, a little out of control. And the guys immediately don't like the vibe of the club or the wildness of the atmosphere. It's a little off-putting for them. It turned out to be a wild gig. It was just crazy loud and sweaty, and there were these girls in front of me, like 4 girls or something, just right up front, and they were trying to like get my attention. I'm playing, going crazy, and I'm like looking down at them going, what do you want? You want a conversation in the middle of playing the gig? I'm trying to concentrate here. I'm already a little drunk. I'd been at dinner and we had wine, and that was during my vodka years, where there was always a vodka on the stage, a pretty big one. Just made me go nuts, you know. I was never into any powder or any of that crap. Vodka was my thing. Just kept me, you know, in performing mood. Sometimes you go out on a stage at 2 in the afternoon, you know, you're doing a big festival, and you're way down the roster of bands, and it's like, it's very hard to rock out at 2 in the afternoon. But you don't want to disappoint the people who are looking at you, so the answer is vodka. It literally is. And in your mind, it's like late at night, so you start performing. Anyway, these girls are like, look. And in their hands, they have a big, enormous pitcher of booze, of a cocktail. I don't know, it was all colorful. I don't know what it was. Probably a vodka cocktail of some sort. And they have all these straws coming out of it. It must have been like 5 liters of stuff. And they want to drink it with me. And there's a security guy on my right, and there's the steps up to the stage. And I say to him, like, okay, let them around, you know. I kind of give him the nod to come around and let the girls up. So they come around the side and up on my side of the stage, and I'm there trying to play, you know. And they hold up the enormous pitcher, and I lean over and catch a straw with my mouth, and they all grab straws, and we just suck the entire pitcher all the way down to the bottom till it's gone, just in one go. And they're like, yay! And I'm like, this world is spinning. I'm already fairly liquored up, guys. I'm looking down at hands playing the bass. I'm like, whose hands are they? Oh, they're mine. Like, that kind of thing would happen every now and then. Anyway, that was wild, and they wanted to party afterwards. I don't know what they wanted. bring me off somewhere or something. But I had that girl was there, and I guess she had full expectations. She was going to leave the venue with me, so it was one of those situations where I had to tell the girls, you guys are fun, but pre-booked. And it was just a wild atmosphere. It was kind of a mess of a gig, to be honest. I'm sure I didn't help with that problem, being smashed drunk out of my mind. But I think I got in an argument with a guy outside as well, if I remember correctly. That was during the whole Afghanistan bombing stuff, and Florida had that whole freedom fries thing, you know, on the menus. They were all, Jacques Chirac said he didn't support the war in Iraq, so all the Floridans were buying French wine. They were all buying Bordeaux and pouring it down the gutter. I'm like, but you bought the wine, like you gave them money, like doesn't make any sense. So I wind up in some discussion, some political discussion with a guy outside, you know, typical me. But anyway, this girl gets a little firm with me. She's like, let's go, you know, you're leaving with me. She wanted what she came for, basically. So I'm kind of fairly twisted. Probably would have been no use to her anyway. But whatever, I leave with her. We get in her car and she's driving. But her phone keeps ringing. And she keeps hanging it up without answering, you know. Cancelling the call, whatever. We're talking away, and eventually she, you know, the phone rings again in her car, and eventually she picks up and goes, listen, I'll call you tomorrow. Stop calling me. Something to that effect. She mentioned the guy's name, but I'm not going to say his name. And then she hung up, and I was like, oh boy, you have a boyfriend. Of course you do. It's been 6 months since I've talked to you. And I was like, you know what, just bring me to the hotel. Like, I feel bad for this guy. I don't even know who he is. And I feel bad for him. I'm sure he probably was aware the band were coming to town. So then I'm thinking, like, I started putting all the pieces together, you know, backtracking through the day, thinking, oh, that's why she showed up at the sound check earlier. And I'm thinking about the restaurant we ate at, like, is it a place she knew he would never go to, or on the opposite side of town from him or something. I was just trying to think of all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that I was unaware of as she orchestrated her infidelity, you know. So I'm like, oh, screw you, this is bullshit, like, don't do this. Also, I thought, what if this guy's packing a gun? This is Florida, lower Florida. You know, the guy might want to blow my head off or something. There was nothing good about, you know, the possible outcome. So I just said, look, bring me to the hotel. So she's not too happy with that. We get into a little bit of a shouting match in the car. And at one point she's like driving like this, and she's looking over at me, as you know. And at one point she looks back at where she's driving, you know, forward. And she goes, what's that? And I see a car in the middle of the road, just abandoned. Like someone was in it, was driving, didn't pull over, just stopped and got out and left the car. No lights on or anything. And there's a thing in Florida, you have these long, slow bridges, big, long, stretchy, slow bridges like this, connecting the different pieces of it. And my hotel is on the other side. I can nearly see it over on the other side. It's like if it's over there, something about that distance. Anyway, so we see this car in the middle of a tiff, and we see this car just come at us, or we're going towards it at 60 miles an hour. We have exactly a quarter of a second to react. She makes a kind of a spur of the moment kind of reaction to swerve away from it. We catch it on the side, we hit it, just on my side, actually, she was turning away, and this corner of it whacks into the car at 60 miles an hour, and we spin halfway up the bridge. I don't know if I lost consciousness, but whatever. Next thing, I'm sitting there going, holy shit. She seems okay. My side of the car is destroyed. My legs are kind of a little bit crushed in. My door is a mess. There's no way I'm getting out of that door. So I'm like, get out of the car, just in case the thing blows up or something. That's all I remember saying is, get out of the car. And I climb over behind me into the back seat and get out of the back on my side. And I sit down on the curb, just thinking, Jesus, this night is getting crazier and crazier. The cops must have been there in 5 minutes less. Maybe somebody else had a near miss a couple of minutes before us with the same car and called it in. The cops were there like that. So they're there and they take her away. She goes to jail for like 3 or 4 days. DUI, you know, she was drinking all evening. And then she's driving, no can do. So I see her getting cuffed and taken away. And they're asking me questions, you know. I remember I vomited. The officer was talking to me. I'm like, just 1 second, officer. And I throw up, probably from the shock, probably from the booze, from the shake of the accident, whatever it was. I turn back and I'm like, yes, officer, you were saying, sorry, you know. And I could see my hotel. I'm like, there's my hotel over there. I was almost home. I'm like, could someone drop me over there? Because I'm stranded now. The cop is like, we can't do that. We're not a taxi service. We're the police, for crying out. But eventually more cops came along and they're all doing their paperwork and they're all chatting. So one of them says, look, where are you staying? You're staying over there? Okay, get in the back of the squad car. I'll drop you over. That was my first time in a squad car. First of many, but I'm not going to get into that on this episode. Later, another time. He drops me back, and we have a big suite there, you know, in the hotel. We have the top suite on the top floor. Not for any fancy reason. It's because all the other rooms were booked out. It was the only room we could get. And you know, the guys are all, you know, sprawled out, you know, on the couches and the pull-out beds and so on. I think I just passed out on the floor. I think I grabbed a cushion and just fell asleep in my clothes. A mess. We woke up in the morning. The drummer was like, oh, that was the worst night ever. The sound was terrible. I couldn't hear a thing. What a crazy place. Everyone was wild and out of control. My brother wakes up. He plays guitar, or played guitar in the band for years. He's like, yeah, we had a big screaming match with the promoter. Wouldn't pay us. There was problems. It was horrible. Terrible sound. Crazy crowd. The singer, he had a weird one, actually. He sits up and goes, oh, wow. Yeah, I got in a car with a girl and she was driving me back and called her husband from the car. We're like, what? Apparently she was like taking him home and she calls and goes, hey, honey, I'm on my way home. Guess who I have with me for a threesome? I bet he's never told anyone that story. But he got to a red light or something. He just darted out of the car and ran back to the venue. And of course I sit up and I'm like, oh, I was in a car crash and she got arrested. And they're all like, what? It just, the stories got worse and worse and worse. The tour manager was like, listen, I know the plan is to hang out in this town for another day or so, but what do you guys say if we just get the hell out of here? And we're all looking at each other going, yep, let's do it. And we had to just bail out. I remember the relief of getting into the van and just leaving that town. That was just a feeling of like, let's bail before someone gets killed. So there's a bad omen in this town, and before it really gets its teeth into us, we better get the hell out of here. Now, I was pretty banged up, as you can imagine. It's one thing when you're drunk, you don't feel it, you know, you get out of the car, you're like, But then the booze wears off, and the adrenaline wears off, and the shock wears off. And then you start feeling all the bruises and the bumps. So my legs were all messed up, they were all bruised. And I wasn't feeling too good internally. You know, it occurred to me that we were kind of leaving our previous touring life, you know, clubs and all of that, and moving up to the kind of bigger time, the big time stuff, like the big crowds with the Van Halen, and we did the Who and Bryan Adams and Journey and Sheryl Crow and all these other people. And I kind of thought, is this our past life, our previous life, trying to drag us back down? Like, is that what's happening? Like, it's not letting us away. It's not going quietly. It's not going gently into that good night. It's kicking our ass a little bit before we move on. The imagery of the crabs, you know, they say if you're boiling crabs in a big tall pot and all the crabs are trying to get out, horrific scene really. They say that if one crab finally manages to get a grip of the edge and is maybe getting out of the pot, that the other crabs get excited and try to grab onto him. And by grabbing onto him, they pull him actually back down, and no one gets out. It's kind of a horrible image, but that kind of thing came to mind. I was like, is Lower Florida trying to kill us before we get to Van Halen, you know? So I'm not feeling good. I'm in the van, back of the van, 2-day drive, Lower Florida, all the way up around the Gulf to San Antonio, quite a drive. So I'm in the back of this van, just like bumping up and down, and I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling good. My legs are wrecked, they're all bruised to hell. And worse than that, I feel kind of internal struggle going on. I'm like, guys, my hard drive isn't working right anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. I've never felt this kind of weirdness. Our guy called ahead, and Van Halen has paramedics, and the venue has paramedics. We got there and they checked me out, and they're like, look, it doesn't seem too bad. You don't look in good shape, but you don't seem to have internal bleeding or anything. Do the show and go to hospital straight after. So here I am. I was thinking I was going to go crazy on the Van Halen stage and headbang and go nuts and party with Van Halen if I got the chance. And instead I feel like a brittle piece of china about to fall apart. I go on the stage like, ugh, and they put the bass over me, and I just gently play the notes right, and I play my keyboard, and I just stay still. I didn't move. It was such a tragedy for me the first night. There's other stuff that happened as well. Eddie came backstage and all, and I put that in the other video. If you haven't seen it, go and look at it. Storytime Part 1. But I stood still. If anyone was watching me, which I'm sure somebody was, there's a lot of people in the place, they were probably thinking, oh, this is a great band, they're all great, except for that guy. He's just standing there. And then I finished the gig, I took off the bass, I handed it to the roadie, and I just hobbled off the stage, just trying not to fall to pieces, you know. So I went to the hospital, and I go in, there's that nurse there who administers people. You know, these creatures, they're so jaded, they've seen everything, they're like numb to everything. You can tell them they're dying and they'd be like, yeah, what's your social security number, all that stuff. So she sticks that thing on my arm, you know, that they pump up, you know, to take your blood pressure. And I'm thinking, oh boy, no, this doesn't feel right. No, you can't do this right now. It starts crushing my arm, and I'm already feeling internal issues, cardiac kind of stuff. I begin to lose my speech. I'm like, I can't even reply to her. And she looks up from her, she's pumping this thing and typing in stuff, and she looks up at me and she goes, oh, you're having a long heart attack. I was like, what? And I fell over, I passed out on the floor. And I woke up on a hospital bed with an ECG machine attached to me, all around here. Doc comes in, he's like, how you doing, man? And I'm like, actually, Doc, I actually feel pretty good. For the first time in like 72 hours, it's gone. I feel all right. I felt the worst ever a few minutes ago, passed out, and it like broke me or broke something. He said, listen, you've got a big red mark from the seatbelt across you. You were clearly in a pretty hard accident. The belt saved you. There's no doubt about that. You would have been, with that kind of force, you would have been catapulted through the windshield and in front of the car. You would have been a goner. But what happens is the belt holds you back and you get shaken like a cocktail. All your internal organs are shaken really, really hard in that split second. And he goes, and now your internal parts are a little upset, including your heart, and you've probably been having heart palpitations because of it. And he says that the heart is like a watch. It's got a beat, it's got a rhythm it gets into. Now that I know about watches, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's like the balance wheel, See, I told you it's a watch channel. I knew it would come around to watches somehow. Anybody who's watching this video who isn't a watch fan is thinking, what the hell is a balance wheel? But it's the heart of a watch. And he goes, that's exactly how it works. And maybe it was a little offbeat and trying to come back to its rhythm. And that's why you were feeling all of this weirdness and instability and stuff. And he said, it may have just stopped for a split second and kind of picked up its rhythm again. And that's why you're feeling better. Okay, whatever it was, it didn't matter to me. I'm like, I just feel good now. I don't care. Whatever the reason is, it worked. And I'm good as gold again. I went back to the venue. I walked into the lads. They're all like, and so? And I'm like, someone give me a beer.